Hello everyone, welcome to my honest opinions on Paradise Killer. This is a game that I dithered about starting for a while and then eventually jumped in and absolutely fell in love with. It's one of my favourite gaming experiences I've had in a while, so I figured I'd talk about it. For those who've not heard of it, Paradise Killer is a murder mystery exploration game with a strong emphasis on narrative and basically no linearity whatsoever. So it's kind of a mishmash of elements, but it breaks down into conversations with people, suspects, mostly. Exploring this world that you can kind of see some of in front of you, learning about its inhabitants, about its history, picking up items, picking up clues. And then, this murder mystery part where there is a complex crime to solve, or a set of sub-crimes or side plots. And it's all completely non-linear. So where I am right now, I've just played through, I basically skipped the intro for you, essentially, for the video. So it's maybe 10 minutes or something, is like this introductory sequence that's linear. And then the game spits you out here, and you can do literally anything you want. If I want, I can turn around, I can go back into the courthouse, and I can start the trial, the murder trial that ends the game right now. I'm not going to do that, but I could. So, you're kind of... This game has a very strange world. You can maybe see a couple of odd things already. There's big statue over there of something with lots of arms. This huge glowing magic pyramid. The idea of Paradise Killer, setting-wise, is this is an island created by a bunch of immortals called the Syndicate. This is their 24th attempt at such an island. And the Syndicate are trying to resurrect their gods. But they're weird, horrible gods. So they build these islands and they take citizens, people, put them on the islands, and then they try and get those people to worship these gods in order to try and bring them back. But the islands keep going wrong, demons come in, and so they have to trash the island, sacrifice all the citizens, and make a new one. On the eve of moving everybody over to the new island, Island 25, the council of the Syndicate is murdered. And it's on you, the exiled investigator, Lady Love Dies, everything in this game has weird names, to go in and sort out, figure out what's gone on, what's happened and why, and who did it. I'm going to try and keep this as spoiler-free as possible. Everything I just said is like on the back, there's box text, basically. I'll probably talk to one or two characters, but I'm going to try and keep it super minimal. If you want to avoid any spoilers at all, here's my 2-sentence review. This game stayed in my head for the entire time I'm playing it. I'm still listening to the soundtrack a couple of weeks after I finished it, because the soundtrack's banging. You might, as you can hear. Yeah, it's tight. It's good. It's a mix of this chill, jazzy, poppy, funky stuff. Nice. I was thinking about trying to piece together the bits of the puzzle, in the shower, trying to figure out who done it or where I could go next, what I might have missed in my investigation. I think I found everything in the game, and took me about 17 hours. But I got stuck a couple of times, which happens. But I was able to mostly just get everything myself. And I had an absolutely wonderful time doing it. So if you like narrative games or mystery games, or just wandering around and having a relaxed time exploring something, get this game. It hits all those notes perfectly. So, if you don't mind watching a little bit of gameplay, here's some more. So broadly, it is completely up to you what you do right now. You can press control, and it gives you a few icons that tell you where certain things are, mostly the other characters. And there's a couple of particular spots that you can go to. Like, for instance, this dead ahead is the murder scene, which I will not be showing in this video, don't worry. I'm not going to spoil that. So there's various people you can go and chat to. A lot of these characters, you don't know who they are at this point. Like, the protagonist does, she knows them from before her exile, but you, the player, won't know them yet. So it's kind of part of the journey of discovery. You can go straight to the murder scene if you want, or you can go and chat to people, or you can just go and try and find your way around a little bit. The game heavily incentivizes just exploring everything. So there is a resource in the game that is these blood crystals. So there are tons of those and like little what's called relics, which are basically bits of lore text with an image around the island. And there's several different areas to wander through and try and figure out. There's like environmental puzzles scattered through. If you listen, you can hear like that crackling noise. That's a clue that there's like an item nearby. It's got some directionality as well, so you can tell that something's, you can see that this little puzzle piece is hiding in a corner. You grab that. You kind of wander and pick stuff up. If you like collectible hunting, it's good. If you don't, it's not super obtrusive. What I generally find is these objects are primarily a reward for wandering around looking for clues or exploring the island on foot as you go from, between different characters. The points of interest are spread fairly far and wide, so you'll have an excuse to cross most sections of the island repeatedly, and it's not very big. Like, especially when you're sprinting, you can cross substantial distances quite rapidly. So it's not like a huge deal to go around and explore. But it is. I found it quite satisfying to just like scoop up collectibles. Usually, if you can can I get to the top of something? Like, there's usually both resources there and like maybe a clue or something interesting to see. You can also find more music to add to the soundtrack. This game has like a playlist system where, well, this is Lady Lovedeyes, by the way. This is our protagonist. First time we've seen her. Like, the idea is she's just listening to either music that's like broadcast from speakers on the island or like just on headphones as she's wandering around. So you can pick up tapes and add them to Starlight, your computer, to add more music tracks to the playlist. And then you can customize the playlist in the pause menu, which is kind of cool. Like, if you don't like any of the songs, you can skip them, or you can listen to a particular one over. For the record, I didn't remove a single song from the playlist. They're all great. I'll show you an example of a relic. These are like, they don't do anything for the most part. If you find an item that actually is important, it will tell you. It'll say key item obtained. These are just flavor text. But it's, I found the world quite compelling, and surprisingly, for how weird it is, surprisingly not confusing. I think the game does a good job. Like, right now, you'd be like, what on earth is all this stuff? But the game, I didn't realize how big the moon was. The game does a good job of kind of streamlining all of that in medias res, even though your character doesn't necessarily, like, your character is supposed to know all this, you don't. But she does. So there isn't a point where you're like standing around asking somebody, what is this statue? But, they're in this area, there's like these little statues, you go and poke at them, you get some flavor text. This is Silent Goat, one of the gods. The first god humanity had contact with. He gifted his power to the Syndicate while he was being tortured during the Great Betrayal. His gift allowed us to create the island sequences. You can kind of see, like, this is the first area you go into after you leave the courthouse at the start of the game. And it has all these, like, here's a blood crystal sitting on the side of a stairwell. Here's the god that made all of this happen in the first place. Here's one of the radio towers that gives you a piece of the soundtrack and so on. Like, early, this kind of introduces you to all the different things you might see. One thing I thought was odd about the game is, so there are fast travel points, there are save points, and you can pay a blood crystal to unlock fast travel between that save point and any other ones you have unlocked. Let me try and find one. And the fast travel also costs a blood crystal. So there's like a little bit of friction. Grab this one we got. Fantastic crystallized tear necklace. Fair enough. Oh, here we go. So these save points. You can save for free, obviously, but the game doesn't autosave, which I thought would be a problem initially. But the save points are near enough to each other that the only downside is having to do menus, which, whatever. But you have to pay to unlock the fast travel and then pay to fast travel, so there's a little bit of friction there. And I was a little bit concerned about that, but it turns out that as long as you're picking up blood crystals at a reasonable rate, which is not too difficult, you'll have enough. I think the game mostly wants to stay kind of mysterious, I think, with some of its mechanics. But I did find that I would have appreciated knowing what you spend the blood crystals on and what certain things that you can spend blood crystals on do. So I'm going to give you a hint. If something costs blood crystals, just do it. Outside of fast traveling, which, like, do that when you've got enough of them spared or you need to cross a large distance. But, like, generally speaking, if there's something in the world or a character who wants you to pay them for something, just do it, because it will be useful, it will be interesting, or it will unlock some piece of progress or whatever. In particular, there are foot baths, literal foot baths. Definitely pay for those. They give you movement upgrades. I've seen a couple of people get confused about them or complain that they didn't end up using them till it was quite late on in the game, and found out that you get a big bonus for them. So definitely do those when you can, because they're really smooth your traversal. You can see there's another save point here. We just there's one right there, and there's one here. They're quite close together. So I'm just gonna poke around little ghost that I can talk to. We're gonna ignore that for now. I'm gonna show you the conversations. This is Shinji. It's a little demon chap that hangs around. You can talk to him. He's abrasive, sometimes entertaining. So we're going to talk to one of the major characters. This is Yuri Knight, a man with a big smile and no shirt. That describes a lot of the characters, by the way. This game definitely follows the Hades school of character design, and that everyone is hot. So this game, I'll talk about this more in a minute, but this game has a very clever scope in what they have and haven't implemented. So the dialogue, as you can see, the characters are these 2D sprites rather than being 3D in the rest of the world. So there's no animation per se. You just get these kind of nicely drawn portraits. And there's some voice lines, but they're sort of more like little barks that repeat when the characters say things of a certain tone. Like characters that hate you will swear at you or something, and they'll just use the voice line where they swear at you for certain things they say when they're angry. Cleverly, there's an option where you can turn down the frequency in the menu, so if they annoy you, you can just turn them off. Yuri doesn't like us.
The investigator is here.
I don't believe we've ever met before. So that when you meet the characters for the first time, your computer tells you who they are. Which is kind of... This is a little bit of exposition, but as the characters poke fun at it, what? Why is your computer telling you who I am? The character's well, sorry. So Yuri Knight is a secretary to the architect who designs the island. Put some lore text here. Yuri is new. So Judge is the island's kind of, judge, I guess. A person who believed in justice so strongly that they scrubbed their own identity and bound themselves to the islands to arbitrate. Judge has pulled you out of exile to solve this murder for the good of everybody. So here you get this... The game gives you a lot of choice over the tone of the conversations. You can either... I don't know exactly how much it diverges because I've played through it once exactly. But with a lot of the characters, you can either... like, for the angry characters, you can maybe antagonize them a bit, or you can try and appease them or soothe them or be very professional or whatever. In this case, we can either... You know, Yuri's giving us the rundown. We can return the favor, or we can kind of try and rise above it a little bit. Let's insult him, why not?
Don't be snide with me.
He calls you freak a lot. A lot of people call you Lady Love Dies the investigation freak, so some of them turn that into an insult.
Don't be naive.
He really doesn't like us. Doesn't like sarcasm either. So now we can just sort of chat through. At this point, we're starting to
Don't make me laugh.
bring in some plot relevant stuff, I guess. And then here, so we've got another phase of the conversation. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but we get another choice. So you can kind of, over the course of this chat, we might get several of these choices, depending on how long you talk to them for. So again, we can insult him, or we can
I'm glad to be
just
back.
talk about ourselves, maybe diffuse the anger a little bit.
Nothing on me.
Henry is the existing suspect for this murder. It's up to you to determine whether he's actually done it.
Got it.
What business is it
Oops,
of yours?
sorry, I didn't mean to click through that. There's a little history there, if I skip through anything too quickly. So Yuri is very convinced that Henry did it, which is not an uncommon opinion.
Private repulsive.
We can kind of prod at him a little bit.
Sufferable.
He's not bothered. Being sad is for the weak. So at this point, you can question people about the case files, or you can just chat to them, regardless of whether they're nice to you or not, or you can leave. At the risk of spoilers, and because clicking through dialogue isn't like the most riveting video content, I'm going to skip the actual meat of this. But I just wanted to show you, like, you know, how it typically flows. I find the writing to be very good. It's not like... The bar for game writing is not usually particularly high, but, you know, if you play more and more narrative indie games, you realize there's definitely ones that do it better than others. The writing in Paradise Killer is very snappy. It makes, like, a lot of the game is just talking to people, and that means clicking through menus of talking to people. And they do a good job of making that not drag. Like, there's a lot of back and forth between the characters. Everyone is different. Like, some of them are very hostile, some of them are very friendly, some of them are preoccupied with something else. They have quite different accents and visual design and whatnot. And they're differentiated very well in, like, you know, that aspect of their character is carried through in how they're presented to you while you're interacting with them. So that there aren't, like, you know, no two characters will answer the same question the same way, basically. Which helps keep it varied, because there are times when you're just like, okay, I've got this one piece of evidence, and there's 3 people I can ask about it, let's go and do that. And sometimes there are times where you kind of narrow down your currently open lines of inquiry. And you get to this point where you're like, okay, I just need to see this one thing through, and then whatever's next. Speaking of lines of inquiry, let's look at the menu. Yeah. So this is Starlight, your computer. This is brilliant. For those of you who played Return of the Obra Dinn, you might be familiar with you might remember its notebook or sketchbook or whatever it was. For those of you who haven't played it, in Return of the Obra Dinn, which is another kind of mystery game where you're trying to figure out what happened to the 60 crew members of a ship and who they are. You accumulate information in this notebook that your character writes out, but it's relatively vague and relatively hard to navigate. Paradise Killer doesn't do that at all. Whenever you get new information or new things that you can investigate, it shows up not only in this list of notes, which are like, here are things that we know about, here are all the different characters and what I can talk to them about, things I don't know. There are also the case files. So we have information on each suspect and information on crimes. And then if I click on one of these, let's go with Yuri because we've already talked to him. We've got things that might give them a motive for the crime, things that we know give them an alibi, and things that then counteract those alibis. And we don't have anything in here yet because we've not done anything. But it fills out really clearly as you go. Like, information sort, you don't have to sort the information yourself. It does it for you, kind of automatically, and it will sometimes fill in. Like if there's information that pertains to multiple characters, it will fill it in multiple places if necessary. This is fantastic because like it's really easy to forget stuff. I really found myself struggling to remember what I was doing in Obra Dinn, and there's none of that in Paradise Killer, even once it gets really complicated. Like as you go down, you get more and more evidence. You find you're like halfway through the game, and you've got like 6 things that you're looking into, and some people are being obstinate and some people are being helpful, and you're kind of like, I need to get into this locked door, or I need to do all this stuff. And you can go in here and look at, okay, I'm going to go and talk to this person next. What have I got on them? Okay, I need to try and make progress on this note. What have I got on that? And I found this just invaluable. When I was trying to think about, when I found all the things and I was trying to figure out what I actually wanted to do at the trial at the end, being able to go back through and like read exactly what evidence was found where and who said what about what thing was incredibly helpful. And I think it's like, it sounds like a small kind of boring thing, like, well, yeah, organizing information, but it's a really kind player affordance. Like, you don't have to worry about remembering weird, complicated, or sometimes contradictory information. It will write it down and it will tell you where it's contradictory. And you can go and look at it whenever you need. Probably, I don't know how many murder mystery games have that kind of, I assume most of them have some kind of, diary of whatever information you've picked up. But I would be very surprised if any of them had one that was this good, very often. I'm just going to wander about and chat about a couple more things that I really like about the game. I mentioned earlier that I was very impressed with Paradise Killer's scope. Get that blood crystal, why not? So Paradise Killer is made by a very small team. Little hidden thing here. The company that made it, Kaizen Gameworks, is predominantly 2 people. 2 quite experienced people, as developers, but still. And one thing that's incredibly interesting about the game is you can see all of the places where they've like made decisions that made it possible to make this game with a skeleton crew of people. Like, oh look, a thing. I'm literally just wandering around and finding stuff. And you hear that noise, and you're like, oh. So obviously the island is quite kind of lo-fi. The game runs on Unreal Engine, but you're not necessarily looking to push the boundaries of graphics with, 1 or 2 artists. So they've gone with this very stark, very readable visual style, where you've got like the splashes of pink indicate things that you can interact with or things that are useful. You got those kind of big exaggerated like brackets and glitch effects over interactable things, so it's just kind of hard to miss them. But that also makes for some, it's stylish, right? It's like the game has a lot of character in its art style. There's very little 3D animation. There's a couple of things that move, but like broadly, the characters are 2D splash art basically in different poses. The island itself is very, it's not static. It feels lively because you've got the animals flying around, weather conditions and stuff, but it's all done in a way that like doesn't require a ton of bespoke animations. Oh, get randomly cold. Forget what this is. Oh, this is one of the other characters phoned us, probably to swear at us. Akiko's angry. This is Akiko trying to tell us to go away. Oh, that you can't see the text there, but it says sassy, her fault. Let's give her some sass, why not? You know, I thought about where to put my my camera before doing this video, and I thought, yeah, I'll have space to the left of the text boxes so people will be able to read the text boxes. I forgot about this one. So that it says a suspect which escaped on your watch and possibly murdered the entire council. If you're young, don't look that up, by the way, that word. It's a Romanian swear word. It's not, it's a mild one, I think, but she doesn't like us. So it says, I'll just read this out because it's obscured. It says, we have a suspect that was found with a murder weapon. He has motive and history. He was found with the council's blood in his stomach. We're not making a super collider here. Nenorochito. This is, again, this is all stuff that's in the first few minutes of the game. So, which is good because I forgot that this happened. And I'm glad that this isn't a spoiler. Nevertheless, maybe I'll skim through the rest of it so that we don't get... I'm just gonna fast forward a little bit so that we don't have too many spoilers. So thanks, Akiko, for messing up my video. Hope that didn't ruin anything. What was I talking about? Scope. Yes. So, as well as having this kind of relatively low animation 3D environment coupled with 2D characters style with a very strong visual identity, they've also kind of... That visual identity pulls double duty as making an environment that's incredibly readable. Like, there's not even any distance fog, which makes it easier to tell where you are. Like, I can look up and see, oh, that's the council building, that's the big tower I started out next to. It's the Syndicate HQ. You can see these apartments from quite a distance as well. There's a big mountain that we can't quite see from here. You can kind of see something moving in the distance. That's like the big, like a floating thing on top of a power station. So, one of these pyramids has like the glowy magic on that you can see. It's on the other side of the island now, but... And there's the big tower. That's where you started. Up there. In exile. And so the kind of bright splashes of pink for interactivity make for both this kind of unusual, irreverent visual style, and they immediately catch your eye without a need for like pulsing outlines or anything. It's just kind of baked into the environment. There's also a very simple but effective use of materials similarly to that. Like, you get these kind of, a lot of things are just grey concrete or repeating kind of sand textures, but then you've got these crystal statues that are everywhere. They have this otherworldly look to them, and they stand out with the trees, obviously. So it kind of very effectively, like, visually portions the world. Just grab this thing while we're here, why not? Absurd message stones. Poor citizens. They have it tough. And then you've got this soundtrack. There's no, like, dynamic music in the game, necessarily. It's just this playlist system that you have a lot of control over. But that works kind of in flavor as well. Like, your character is just listening to music as she wanders around, having a nice time. Like, yeah, it's pretty nice to listen to, like, synth funk and take a stroll along a beach, even if it's got a bunch of weird statues on. Under the, the swirling night sky. Like, there's something about the way they've pulled off having an incredibly lo-fi visual style, which is not normally something that I'd enjoy, that goes straight into the side of elegance. Like the use of like incredibly flat lines and textures, coupled with like kind of sumptuous lighting and a really nice skybox, makes for like, this game looks really good, despite the fact that like I would never have expected it to. And so there's, in practice, despite the fact that they've made a lot of kind of time conscious or scope conscious choices in the game, nothing that actually like matters to your experience in a real way is skimped on. Like the writing is great, the music is great, the visuals, like I said, they do look surprisingly nice. Like I would have not expected grey concrete with tiled textures to be particularly visually appealing, but like this game just oozes charm and style all the time. The movement even feels good. Like the jump's a bit odd, but once you have double jump, how many blood crystals? I have 8 blood crystals. Let's use the foot bath.
Ooh, the investigator is here. Oh, I'm glad to be back.
Makes your feet feel really nice, which allows you to jump more.
That's strange. That's
It's
weird.
magic, probably.
Sure.
So I would note that I unlocked this using blood crystals that I picked up while wandering around, like showing you the environment. So although it looks prohibitive to have to pay for a bunch of stuff in the game, it's like a weird friction. It's not like a huge deal. The resources are generally quite plentiful. Let's grab another track and then playlist, why not? Yeah, so now we have double jump, which you can just kind of get. The exploration is really satisfying. Like, again, it sounds silly. You're just like wandering around picking up collectibles. You know, I didn't enjoy that in, say, Psychonauts, but I found it really satisfying here because I think getting to use the resources to make your life better, like getting to spend the money on, well, I won't tell you what else it's spent on, I'll let you discover that for yourselves, but like, for instance, getting that upgrade, or like, you know, moving the plot forward, or finding little details, it's fun. Like, you feel rewarded for having gone around and scooped up this stuff. But also, like, you were there anyway. A lot of the time, the game wants you to explore to find clues, or to get to people. Like, because you can't fast travel super easily, you will end up retreading ground. But that's okay, because, like, you move kind of quickly, the world's not very big. There's no fall damage, so, like, you can get down from places by just jumping. And if you sprint, this is me sprinting, like, you actually move pretty quickly. So when you're beating areas or just trying to... Oh! Hello! It's a ghost!
I presume.
I ran into this character somewhere else, so I... Can I back out of this? I can't. Well, I tell you what. Now that I've tantalized you with the mysterious appearance of a ghost, I'll probably back out here to avoid further spoilers. It is very difficult to show off entirely narrative-based games in a YouTube video without actually making it, without actually spoiling people's kind of first steps into the game themselves. But yeah, another thing that's worth talking about actually is the overall tone of some of the game's themes. So the citizens, like the non-immortal people who get put on the islands, don't have the easiest of times, and there are quite a lot of places in conversation where you just get to stick up for them or say, yes, screw those people, like the gods are what's important or whatever. It's not Disco Elysium, but there's some quite satisfying some quite satisfying dialogue or moments behind those choices that I appreciated, that resonated with me. Like, I wasn't really expecting there to be kind of stuff I would resonate with socially in, you know, a murder mystery game set on weird this weird island with lots of gods and murder and stuff. But those themes, they come up, and there's one character in particular that they that they're important to in a couple of ways. And I enjoyed that aspect. I like when games take a nod at the real world and say, hey, like, oppressing people is bad. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything particularly complicated, but it's good to have, like, more games include these themes rather than, a lot of games are very colonialist or like, hey, we're going to go and shoot people that look different from us. Or both. Often both. And it's nice to have games that are more conscious of, like, power dynamics in society and stuff. So I enjoyed those themes. And then, as I mentioned, I found the world more approachable than I was expecting. Like, at the beginning, the game is throwing proper nouns at you. And most of the time when games throw proper nouns at me, I forget them or I shut off and I don't care. And I didn't actually find that with this. Like, yeah, I'm not going to memorize all of the random gods, but you get to know, you get a feel for the world and the, like, weird, messed up culture of the Syndicate quite quickly. And then everything that you encounter or that you do fits into that. Like, there's loads of things that are like these, like, ritualistic elements, even like things you interact with in the world that are like, you can donate blood to shrines, and you can, look at these statues of the gods that are, like, absolutely everywhere. And like there's some characters that are, very entwined with this stuff and so on. So it very, very cleanly brings its theme, its, like, world building into the actual world that you're wandering through, without it just being backstory or a list of, like, the pronoun including proper noun including an X fought a mighty war against the proper noun including two X's. Cough destiny cough. It actually, like, the information is relevant and surprisingly interesting and just sort of, like, fits together because the entire game steeps itself in its own setting and style really well. And so by the time I was a couple hours in, I was very comfortable with this, like, incredibly weird island full of weird, attractive people that all have strange names like Dr. Doom Jazz. Like, that doesn't make any sense out of context, but it isn't out of context, and I like that. I like how that came together. I also haven't talked very much about the actual central mystery, like the plot of the game, which I also found really compelling. There's plenty of twists and turns and kind of ambiguous things that you can resolve with more evidence or more exploring. And it goes into both, like, the mechanical facts of who was there and what happened, but also the kind of emotional side of, like, not just people's motives, but characters' relations to one another and why they would do a certain thing or talk to a certain person. I also found that for a completely non-linear game, there were a lot of twists. Now, I did bring this on myself to an extent by there's a large building with shiny golden doors that I didn't realize you could go in. The doors open, and I think I just, like, glanced at it and was like, oh, it's just a big shiny golden wall. And I left, and I never came back for, like, ages. And I was wandering around trying to figure out, like, okay, I'm really stuck. Like, what do I do next? Went up there, was like, oh, can you go in? Oh, here's all the plot I've been missing. So if you don't do that, go in there. Shiny golden doors, they're open. Pro tip. And that was, like, the one place where the visual style let me down a little bit, actually. Because what happened was there's another pair of doors behind the first one. There's, like, in a little anteroom in the building. And so the gap was kind of filled by more golden surface, essentially. So I thought it was just a closed door. But it's not. On the getting stuck, I did. So I guess this is hard to predict in a non-linear game. I did get stuck a couple of times. There were a couple of bits of evidence right at the end that I ended up Googling for hints for. Because there was one that I should have figured out. And there was one that I thought I'd done the right thing for, but I hadn't quite. And like I said, there was a bit that I got stuck, but that was mostly because I hadn't gone in this building. That I was clearly supposed to have gone in. Other than that, there are definitely periods of faster or slower pace where you have more or less information to go on. Like early on, the world is kind of your oyster, and then there are parts of the game later on where you like finally gain access to something, an area or a piece of information, a piece of evidence. You find something that kind of gives you a new unlock of, oh, okay, I can do this now. Oh, here's a new thing to talk to this person about. So I think basically it's like a metroidvania. I've not really brought that up so far, but like if you think about it, it's a relatively compact world that you explore and crisscross over multiple times. There's collectibles, some of which you can get straight away, some of which you can get later on when you've got more upgrades, like the platforming upgrades and stuff. There's and then also as you unlock more things, you gain access to new areas that are within the space you've already been exploring that you knew about, but now you can go in there. It's a Metroidvania. It's a non-linear narrative game that's like the thing I think is got most in common with stylistically is like Hades. Because of the character design and the way the kind of visual novel aspect is used. But it's a Metroidvania. Yeah, basically, forget all the stuff I said at the start about non-linear murder mystery. This is a Metroidvania visual novel. There's maybe a better summary of the mechanics. So, I think that is quite a good way of, providing pace to a game like this. So it doesn't just tail off completely. And if you get fully stuck, you can just go and do the trial. You can just end the game. I wanted to 100% it because I was enjoying it too much to cut myself short of any content. But, your mileage may vary. The game doesn't force you to do that to get an ending. The game also, I believe, I don't think it has like a right or wrong necessarily. I think, without wishing to go into detail about how the trial actually works, that description I felt was maybe slightly simplistic, but you can it is kind of up to you what the ending is, in a way, which I think is, I don't know exactly, again, I haven't played it through multiple times, so I don't know exactly how that works, if you make different decisions or have different evidence than I did. But I'd be kind of interested to know, to be honest. Yeah, what else? Is there anything I haven't covered? I think that's about it. Yeah, I really enjoyed this game. I mentioned at the start that I fell in love with it, and I'm an old man. I mean, I'm not really, I'm 31, but like, my job is very tiring, and the world is full of horrible injustice and scary things. And although my own life is pretty privileged, that's still, even for me, existence is hard, and I'm sure for a lot of people it's much more difficult. And I, as mentioned, tired after work. I found myself really craving like relatively chill gaming experiences. I don't necessarily want them to be completely unchallenging, but like, I've played Dead Cells and I've played Hades and I've put a lot of hours into both. And I don't think I could start another roguelike from the beginning now. Like, maybe if it was really good, yeah, sure, but like, you know what I mean? That's why I picked up Destiny. I just want a game where like I can skip all the dialogue and just go pew 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 at zombies. And this game is like that, but I don't want to skip the dialogue because it's good. So I like wandering around the island, hunting for clues, or just picking up blood crystals and listening to the chill gems is wonderfully relaxing. I think the soundtrack like really carries that element of the game. Because if it wasn't for the soundtrack, if you just played this game with the sound off or something, it probably wouldn't be anywhere near as enjoyable an experience. I don't know. It's sort of. I mean, your mileage may vary. Obviously, deaf people play games without music. Obviously, like it's. I'm sure it's not mandatory, but I really found that, like, for me, the music was a big part of the feel of the experience, and it complements the visuals very well. So you get this kind of like really, it's vivid but also soothing. I think the music fits there. And then, as I mentioned, I really got into the story. I found myself trying to figure out what was going on. I think I've not played a lot of murder mystery games, but I have played Return of the Obra Dinn, and that's a fantastic game, but it didn't grab me in the same way. Like, there's a lot of mystery to it, and there are definitely some startling moments and moments of emotion in Return of the Obra Dinn, but I mostly experienced it like a big logic puzzle. With this game, I experienced it like a story. So it really grabbed me. I loved it. Yeah, it's never... I almost didn't play it, but I remember, like, props to Tom Francis, developer of Gunpoint and Heat Signature, who is on the Crate and Crowbar podcast, who talked about the game. I think it was him. Talked about the game and said he'd been really enjoying it. And that's sort of what he said about it, I think, was what prompted me to actually, like, install it and then later on give it a go. And yeah, honestly, one of my just like shot to the top of my amorphous cloud of favorite games. I've never played anything like Paradise Killer, and I think it's I feel like it's a huge step forward for narrative in games and for like how to scope an indie game. Because, like, holy crap, they have like, there's nothing in this game that feels like a cut corner or a limitation. There's been like, fine, I guess we can't do X. But it is also clearly the sort of game that, well, they made with a handful of people. And it, like, the way the brilliance of that is still impresses me. I'm a software developer. Like, scoping is hard. I haven't made much in the way of video games. Made some tabletop games, but like, yeah, scoping projects is hard. Not biting off more than you can chew is very hard, and these folks have the experience and the skill to like make really good decisions about what to focus on, what to like put lots of tuning into, and what to keep clean, and how to make good use of that kind of lo-fi cleanliness. Right. I have rambled on for long enough. You've probably made up your mind by now whether or not to get this game. So, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed Paradise Killer as much as I did if you decide to get it, and I will see you next time.